Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Accessibility Talks. We're glad you could join us for our monthly virtual meetup on accessibility, inclusion, and usability. It's a space where we learn from a guest speaker and connect as a community. I'm your host, Tobias Williams. I'm a senior software engineer at Red Hat. I am a white man with a blue hoodie and a black knit hat. Before we get started, a quick reminder that A11yTalks is dedicated to maintaining a safe and welcoming environment. We ask everyone joining us today, speakers and attendees alike, to follow our code of conduct in the chat and during discussions. You can find a full version on our website. Our goal is to ensure respectful space for open dialogue and learning. We also want to take a moment to thank our partners who make this possible. A special thank you to our bronze supporters, Agile Collective and Principal Financial Group. We also want to recognize our Alley Cat Club members. Every contribution helps us keep the community growing, our content free, and our talks accessible to everyone. If you'd like to support A11yTalks as a sponsor, please visit our website to learn more. Your contributions go directly towards compensating speakers and improving our events. You can also double your impact through corporate matching programs like Benevity. Just search for us under A11yTalks by Midwest Open Source Alliance. Okay, today we have Hector Osborne Rodriguez, who's a senior manager at Accenture. He is going to give his presentation. So take it away, Hector. The floor is yours.
All right, thank you very much. Give me 1 second to share my screen. All right, they should be up there. Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Hector Osborne Rodriguez in Canada, Toronto, located right now. I'll be talking about dreaming of accessibility development, something that I'm passionate about. Give me 1 second here. So let's start with the first warning. I'll be talking about my experience, right? Like my path to accessibility. And on screen, there is like the little sticker of the little dog holding a coffee mug and in fire, and he's saying this is fine, which is kind of like our career, or at least my interpretation of how accessibility SMEs are in the world today. Like everything is burning, where we feel like, oh, everything is fine. We can do it. We hold it. So I will try to describe any image that is on the screen. And to describe myself, I'm Latino. I will have an accent. I'm sorry about it. I will try to modulate better so that you can understand me. Dark skin, and I'm wearing red glasses and a gray shirt. The slides are publicly available. I have a QR code on the screen that I hope it works. I'm not sure if it works. If it does, please just scan it and click. If not, you can go to https bit.ly/dreaming A11y development. So dreaming accessibility development. If not, ask me in LinkedIn and I can post a link. So yeah, hola. I am Hector, Latino. As I mentioned before, I'm originally from Venezuela, and I moved to Toronto, Canada 16 years ago. I've been working in accessibility since I moved to Canada, and I have many roles. I work in Accenture, really large corporation, where we do a lot of system implementation, system integrations, strategy consulting. But my roles are different, and I wear many hats in the company depending on the teams that I'm working on. So I'm sometimes an accessibility lead or accessibility fixer. I also, in the personal life, have a lot of cats and dogs that I close the door so that they don't bug me today, but they're like outside there just waiting for me to open the door, and they will scrum in. I'm a knowledge collector, so I like to learn. You name it, universe, sports, athletics, and that's how I got into accessibility, by learning about it, having a disability myself, and getting curious about how to do it in my line of work, and then I became this person that I am today. I post in LinkedIn mostly. That's my social media that I use regularly. There is a hashtag if you want to follow it and you want to see the stuff that I post there. It's called Pop Accessibility Quiz, POP A11y Quiz. There's some posts in there where I try to open discussions in what accessibility is and what kind of topics we have to have. And I love memes. So this slide. It will have a lot of memes, so I will again try to describe them, and I hope that they don't intrude the conversation. So my path in Accenture, I am a senior manager, so I started as a developer. So I know a lot of front-end development, web page development, and I'm now the accessibility lead for Toronto, Canada, and the Canada market unit. So I work with a lot of teams when it comes to software development, but for all of them, every time I ask them what is accessible development, it depends on who I'm speaking to, right? Am I speaking to Accenture? Am I speaking to a client? Like, what is accessible development? So let's start with the what is not. On the bottom right, there is an image of Drake, kind of like putting away his hand in his face, saying no, kind of like, I don't like this kind of thing, right? So this is what is not accessibility according to my experience. And these are like phrases that I've heard in the world where I work, right? So the first one says, my website passes all automated tests. So if it passes automated scan, then my website is accessible. And we know that automated tools only cover, and I put there XYZ percentage, because depending on the tool that you use, they're going to say they use a number of coverage. It varies 20%, 60%. Like it's a big spectrum of percentages that the tools cover, according of what they promise. But we know it's not 100%. Introduction even of AI, we're still not in 100%. There's human capabilities that need to help to make sure that a website is compliant. We need humans intervention. We need to understand what the language is being spoken about and what the content is being announced. If it is in multiple languages, are you doing the right translation? Is it describing the right image that is there? Those are the kind of things. So we should not rely on just automated tools. Overlays, accessibility overlays. Click here to fix all of your issues. So a button at the bottom of the screen that is floating, that is called an accessibility overlay, that is a product that is sold to just say, install this in your website. From now on, your website is accessible. It's not that simple. It might help certain audiences, but it could really destroy the experience for many others. So when we do that kind of work, it's actually not considered accessible, right? We want to make sure that it's used by everyone, not just a certain group. Accessibility is not also conform to, and I put an acronym here because we have many: WCAG 2.0, 2.1, EN 301549, Section 508, ADA. We have so many acronyms which per se they're not accessible. It makes it confusing for the people that we're talking to. When I speak to CEOs, C-level suite, they don't understand these acronyms. Conforming to an acronym also is confusing because if we go for WCAG, for example, we have level A, level AA, level AAA. It gets so confusing. But at the end, all of this spectrum of requirements are actually just a minimum standard, right? Like this is the bare minimum that you can do. Is not a comprehensive solution. Are you actually helping the customers that need to use the website? Are you actually, if it is an e-commerce website, are they actually able to purchase? Can they receive the items? Can they get the items in their house, in their shelf? Is that the kind of help that we're doing to make it more accessible? Clear example was during the pandemic, where we have many issues. We couldn't go to the store, so we had go to the store to purchase, call a phone number. Maybe that phone number that you needed to call was not accessible for certain audiences, right? So like text, allow them to send a text message is also inclusive to certain audiences, right? So it's not just simple as like conform to WCAG and then you're accessible. All right, let's go beyond that. What is not also, this is critical, is not just your responsibility. Is you're part of a team, a collection, a collective, a group, an organization, right? It's not just on you, whoever is watching this video, I'm talking to you directly. It's not just on you to carry over this on your shoulders. You're part of a group, try to make sure that you get supported. try to get the right help, try to get the right sponsorship so that accessibility happens. And I will talk about it in a few seconds. Okay, so accessibility development, according to the real definition, is a practice of creating websites. And I speak for website because that's the digital asset that I mostly build. But it's a practice of creating websites and web applications that can be used by all individuals, especially those with disabilities. The goal is to ensure that the content and the functionality are accessible to people with various types of impairments. Right on the bottom right, there's Drake now saying that he's happy, and he's saying, yes, I like that, right? It's a practice, and I highlighted that word because it's not an end goal. It's not like we are accessible today, March 13 at 12 p.m. Maybe in a few days, your experience is no longer accessible, right? So it's a practice. It should be ever evolving. It should be continued to evolve. And it should be used by all. All of us will eventually have a disability. It will vary the kind of disability that we will have, but that's the thought that we should have. It's an evolving thing. We should evolve to make sure that anyone can use these experiences because we are relying on technology for our day-to-day life. So if you define what a practice is, it's complicated, but what does a practice requires? And I have listed many of them on the screen. I'm going to read just some of them, but before I'm going to explain, on the bottom right, there's Jackie Chan holding hands over his head with a what is happening here expression, right? Like WTF. A practice requires leadership commitment, inclusive mindset and support, proactive accessibility in design and development. And I'm going to skip some of them. It requires metrics. It requires tests. It requires accessible communication. It requires so many things. And this is what I said earlier, is not only on you. Because if you're doing a lot of work and you're trying to do your best, this goes beyond what you can do. You need marketing, you need HR to be involved in it. You need C-level suite to be involved in it. You need tools. You need to acquire those tools for these services to be truly accessible. So at the end, if I'm not responsible, who is then? Right? The bottom, there's a person thinking like, who's responsible? And he has like on the shoulder himself as a devil, and in the other shoulder himself as a little angel. You know, when you're thinking like, should I go to like the devil or to the angel or the saint? Who's responsible for accessibility? So I'm going to talk about a real case scenario that happens. That happened to me, actually. Again, this is my experience. I was in a large project of 300 team members. Within the 300 team members, there was only one accessibility, me carrying the flag of, hey, we need to make sure that accessibility happens. And on the screen, there's a chart with 300 peoples. Of those 300, I think I counted 300. I'm not sure if I did 300, but there's a lot of people in the chart. Of them, there's only one person carrying a flag. So you could imagine the result of this experience, right? Like the outcome would not be too accessible for once, or it relied too much on the accessibility is me. So you're not allowed to get sick. You're not allowed to take vacations. You're not allowed to go away because it's relying too much on one single person. You're also a funnel. Your risk for this development or this result to be actually achievable and to actually commit to accessibility. Now, multiply that in multiple projects running at the same time, multiply that by many countries trying to do it at the same time. And that's what I always say, like, it's not your responsibility alone. We need to make sure that we involve more people. In the typical, if we were to take a photo of a person and skills, you will see that team members will have certain skills. I call it the other skills and accessibility, right? Any team member that is not an accessibility is me will have a lot of skills in many areas and maybe a little bit of accessibility. 5%, 10%, 20%, 25%. Some of them are better, some of them will have more. And accessibility is me, on the other hand, is quite the opposite. You have way more skills in accessibility in design, in development, in testing, in law, in conversations and strategy. And maybe because of developing all the skills, other skills are different. What I wish could happen is that we all had like I wouldn't say 50-50 skills, but we need to increase the skills of the team members so that it goes from 5 maybe all the way to 25%, 30%, so that they know what accessibility is, they care for it, and they include it at every single conversation on time that they have to be included, right? That's the goal that we wish was possible and achievable. But the more people that you transfer their skill from their day-to-day skills to accessibility proper skills, the better rate of success your program will have. So on screen, there is a photo of a Netflix series showing Pablo Escobar, Colombian drug cartel leader, in a series called Narcos. He's alone. He got jail, incarcerated, and then the first photo, he's sitting in a swing. And then in the next photo, he's just eating lunch by himself in his house, and then in an empty pool, just looking out because he's just bored to death. And this is how accessibility sometimes feels. It feels like it's just me and me alone, and I need to make it happen. So what I have learned that is a good way to change this to make sure that all of our teams, when it comes to software development lifecycle, get better at this process. What I learned is, as I mentioned multiple times, working alone doesn't work. You need people. Getting angry at someone for not doing accessibility doesn't work. Telling them that they're doing it awful doesn't work. Hating people for not doing accessibility, it doesn't work. Shaming them for not knowing, that's like, it doesn't work. You need to actually be more inclusive. It is a reality. It, it, it sucks, but it's a reality, right? The other part that I've noticed is that we don't have, or we lack of formal educational degrees. Some areas of the world are better than others, but we don't have a proper path where we could say, you know what, I'm going to be the chief accessibility officer of my company, or I'm going to go to the University of X to study a degree in accessibility practitioner or an accessibility subject matter or whatever, right? Like we have certificates, we have experiences, we have knowledge spread all over the world. So the consequence of that is typically the people that go in the field of accessibility are passionate. People that learn about it and then they continue their own education. Keep up to date, keep knowing what new technologies are coming, and keeping that accessibility knowledge up to date. Some organizations, and I'm talking the big ones, like the big corporations, they might have small accessibility teams, but some of them, or the big majority of them, do not have an accessibility team, which then means that it's relying on the people that is doing the work to be responsible to make accessibility happen. We don't account for their knowledge. Have they been trained on it? Do they know what they're doing? Do they know what is being expected of them? Right? So this is a difficult one because if there's not even one person raising the flag to tell what accessibility is and how it should be done is difficult. It's complex in those kind of scenarios. For those that have it, then there is a strong dependency with the accessibility SMEs, either internal or external. You hire an external company, they have SMEs, they come in, they do the work, maybe they go out, but then there's the follow-up of questions. How do I do this? Should I proceed with this? And there's always this conversation with the SMEs. So we cannot have SMEs, sorry, I've been saying SMEs, subject matter experts, people that really know, that are passionate about accessibility, or they have even accessibility in their title. Is fantastic, but it carries a really big burden. Wrong organization expectations is what I've learned that happens in the field, because there is an assumption that everyone knows if we're going to make accessibility, everyone should know what it is. I'm just going to throw it out there, and everyone that I hire They put in their resume that they know accessibility, and then hence I know that they know. Which is, it could be true, but it could be half true, and maybe we need more expertise. Maybe we need more refreshers. Maybe we need enhancement of the knowledge that they're gathering and they're putting out there. Maybe their tooling needs to change. Maybe the work needs to be supervised. And there are organizations where there's lack of representation, and this is a difficult one. Where are my allies? So accessibility needs to have people in corporations so that they're out there and that people see it. But as you might know, there are many disabilities that are invisible. So how would people know that they're working or they're helping maybe Hector to be better at his job if they don't know that I have a disability? Right? It's hard. I'm not saying that you should just speak about it, but the more we are out there, the more we discuss it and make it friendly for people to understand what an accessibility is or what kind of disability you have. Touching hearts. Accessibility is a really good place to touch people's heart and give them a purpose. So we know what doesn't work. I kind of explain what I think doesn't work, and now let's talk about what I think works or what have worked in my experience. Get business support. Change the business from reactive to proactive. If you live in an area of the world where you are reactive because simply the company will wait for a lawsuit to happen before we get accessible, then try to get business support and demonstrate the case that if we attend to the audiences with disabilities, they're really there's a lot of earning power there. There's loyalty power that is learned by giving me a company supporting my needs. I'm super loyal to them, right? This is not easy, but if it comes from the top down, to name some companies that do really well in that department, it clearly shows when the C-level or the higher level supports give the company guidance on how we're going to make it accessible. We're going to make all things happen. Microsoft had a good push in accessibility. You can see it in their gaming. You can see it in the computers. You can see it in the hardware production. It goes beyond just simply one person trying to make accessible their product. Shift left. In software development lifecycle, we have the process of creating the requirements, designing, development, testing, and going to production, right? Software development lifecycle, they might have more left, more right, but you want to shift left, up, right, and down. Make sure that everything is connected. Make sure that you can see it and it can be seen. If we wait for the issues to happen in production, it's too late. It's too costly. Already someone tried to, going back to the e-commerce example, someone trying to purchase the e-commerce website and it didn't work. Someone is already angry. They're not coming back to your website. They're not coming back to your experience because you let them stranded. If we find that early, it can be stopped. Even before you put a pencil down, you can design the experience properly, right? In physical spaces, a washroom that is too small, it's going to be really hard to make it bigger once it's built and the walls are already around it, right? So it's better to build it properly and design it properly. So the earlier that you can include accessibility, the better. Educate the people that are around you, but also let them learn by doing. Education, training is great, but doing is better. Training, you can go to a training, you can see a video, you go through it. If you don't reinforce that knowledge, it gets lost really quickly. So we need to create opportunities for people to actually help the process. Involve them in testing, maybe. Involve them in reviewing an accessibility design. Like, what do you think this is lacking? What do you think if we have to translate this into English? What are we missing? English, French. In Canada, we use both languages. So if we were to translate an image description, do we have the translation for French? That is an accessibility requirement. So involve them creatively in all the process to make sure that the software can be developed successfully. And document. You found an issue, document it. because the next person might experience the same issue, so you pass that knowledge along. Is if it is a specific issue, for example, a screen reader, which is a software that reads what is in the computer for visually impaired users or certain other audiences. If you find an issue with that software, annotate which version is it, which software are you using, which operating system are you using, because it might be super isolated problem, or is it global? And if you can, even raise that issue to the provider or the creator of the product so that they know, they're aware that it needs to be fixed, and eventually will go into their fixes. Now, what can we do in the software development lifecycle is if requirements are not concise or clear, mistakes are inevitable. If the team does not know what is expected from them and they don't know accessibility, then we need to be clearer to them in what we are expecting. And this is where annotation kind of comes in, right? So we need to improve our design intent annotations. So communicate the intent and the usage. You're designing a component or an experience. Think about it of like you're going to use it with a mouse. You're going to use it with a keyboard. You're going to use it with a screen reader. You're going to use it with a pencil. Like, how is that experience going to be used in all of your assistive technology? Communicate that. Let people know what is your thought. When you click in a button, what is going to happen? Where should it go? What experience are you expecting? Is there a hidden message when that button goes on and off? If those annotations are written at the design level, developers will have less questions around what they should be doing. The testing team will have even less questions because they know what they're testing, because you already wrote that down early. Identify component and the structure of the component that you're building. I work with a lot of CMS, content management systems, where you create experiences and then they're blocks. And those blocks can be arranged up and down and left and right, and you insert them in certain areas of the website. So it's better for the companies that are creating their experiences, because they can kind of like block, Lego brick a page, ensemble the page. But there are situations where those components cannot be used. And even on the visual side, what is this component? Is this an accordion? Is this a model? Is this a button? Is this a link? What are you expecting for it to happen when that element is created? Another thing that is really important to annotate, hidden elements. Things that are not in the screen that needs to be announced, instructions that needs to happen, buttons without labels, that they will be there. We wish there were none, but they will be there. What kind of announcement do we want to have for them when a screen reader user is using them? Close button, open button, click here, alert, emergency, warning, like those kind of messages. Even instructions, how to use your component, or hidden messages, or alerts that appear on the screen after you certain interaction with the user. All right, so make sure that all those hidden elements that are not on the screen are annotated, and the developer and the testers know that they're going to be shown or announced at the moment that an interaction happens. And the other one is content priority. So what is the order of your headings? What is the most important heading in your page? What is the second one? How should they be restructured and organized? If you're going to move a keyboard interaction, how should the keyboard move around the page? If you can simplify that in your designs, you already won a big battle for the next steps of the cycle. Annotate keyword interaction. This is critical. I'm going to give you some examples later, but basically every component in the web uses certain elements to operate. Majority of users might be used to using the mouse, but there's a lot of users that use keyboard only. So how can you use that component? What is the pattern that that component should behave like? Should it use enter? Should it use space, tab, arrows? What is that component should be supporting? Is really critical for the success of that development. Next one is area. Annotate area requirements as much as you can. Try not to use it. Browsers are better now, but if you have to use area, use it properly. Avoid hard coding text in area. What I mean by text is like labels. Do not put hard coded labels in them. Maybe use titles that are already in the page. Learn about area. Don't overcomplicate it. But if you have any requirements of area labels, put it in there. A role, area label by, describe by. Try to get them in there. Special interactions. There are certain components that are radio buttons, but sometimes when you click a radio button, certain other area appear on the screen, and now you have a form. Or maybe you have a tab that when you click on the tab, now you have a new element that shows in the screen. If you're designing a component that goes out of the normal behavior, annotate what is your expectation of that component. If you're creating a new experience out in the world, you're working with AI, and then now you're creating a new chat box, and it's going to be a new experience killer, how is that going to behave? How should that component interact with multiple assets of technology? What is different? What are you doing that is different? Annotate it so that people know. And lastly, dynamic content. Warnings, error, and success messages. Every time you do a flow, make sure that you design the failure case, a warning case, and the success case. It's not just always like I purchased, I went to my shopping cart, approve, I got it in. What happens if the cart fails? What happens if the cart gets deleted? What happens if when I click in checkout, my credit card fails? Like, think of all the scenarios because there will always be failure scenarios, and design for those experiences. How is it going to be announced? How is it going to look? Remember and consider color blindness. Remember and consider screen reader users. What are they going to hear when a new announcement happens? What if it is a warning that is really critical for them to know, like a weather tornado happening around you? That's super critical. It needs to be announced so they know what's happening. Okay. Lastly, if you're working with companies that implements software that is not yours, so define, if you can, SLAs or software. I think SLAs, software license agreements, or service level agreements. Sorry. What is the time for them to fix any issues that you detect on the platform? You're using a video player. That video player might not be yours. You put it in the web. So maybe the video player has an issue with a certain interaction. Can you have SLAs with them to help you fix them? Right? When you contract them, when you hire, when you purchase that software, can you have a way to even report an incident on that software? Do they already have a report on that incident? So make sure that you can have those at hand before you use those kind of platforms. And if you're going to contract a third party, make sure that you know what they're supporting. Are they WCAG compliant? What kind of WCAG are they using? What kind of software accessibility are they compliant? Are they striving to be compliant? Are they compliant? Are they making sure that the website gets optimized and gets better every day? Or they just simply like, you know what, we got here. This is the level that we're going to support. Some examples of annotations. This is something that we've done successfully in many clients now, where we will have a component, and on the screen there's a big text on the screen explaining an anatomy of an accordion. An accordion is that typical element where you have like collapse buttons. When you click on them, something expands and it shows certain content. So on the right side of the screen, there's the anatomy of the accordion, which has a heading, an icon, which typically will indicate whether it's collapsed or expanded, and then a content panel, which is the content that you're showing or hiding. Think of like frequently asked questions or many results. When you have many content that you want to show and it's too big, so they typically show then collapse. Accordion is the element that will do that. On the left-hand side, to make sure that developers, testers, QA, even designers know how an accordion should be, we typically give them an acceptance criteria and how should that behave. What are we expecting? So for example, I'm going to give you an example of a way we do it. We use Gherkin format. We're transitioning to a new one, but Gherkin format, we will say, when I use a keyboard and a screen reader, I move the focus in the accordion panel. That is right there, one requirement. So make sure that you can use a screen reader. Make sure that you know where the keyword, that you can use a keyword. And make sure that you can have the blue indicator to know where that um, keyword focus is. That also indicates to the designer, hey, not only design the visual state for open and close or collapse and expanded, remember to also do the same experience for keyword focus, right? So it goes there. And you can include like maybe make sure that the color contrast is 3.5 to 1 or 4 point, the contrast that it needs, right? Like if you have it there, then the designer will have it and they will know that they need to design those states of the components. Going back to the gherkin. So when I use the keyword on the screen reader, I move the focus to the accordion panel and I see that it receives a visible focus outline. I hear that its purpose is clear. I'm a button, I'm an accordion, I'm a tab, I'm a dialogue, whatever that means. I hear that it identifies with the roll button, and I hear that it pressed states expanded or collapse. Those three requirements are specific for a screen reader. They're intended for them, but it's telling the people that know how to do this what kind of area we expect to be used in those elements. What state should those elements be? Are those states dynamic? Should they change when something happens? And going back to the gherkin, when I activate the accordion panel, I can use space or enter, or I can use the mouse to double tap. Maybe, I don't know, I use one click, left click, right click, whatever you want this component to behave. This should be annotated so that it gets developed later. So this is trying to annotate before you even do send this to the development group. Annotate these requirements early. How should this component behave? Where should it be aligned to? Align, I mean, like in the page, if you have a heading, what kind of heading should this have? What kind of heading should we make dynamic heading editable for that kind of component? Because it's going to be dropped in an area that already has a heading. So we have to consider all of the usages of the component to make it fully accessible. Another example that I have now on the screen is a search box, which is just simply saying, what are you looking for today? It's a placeholder text with a magnifier icon on the right. Input text box, search, fairly common. Search are not easy when you have a type ahead search. There's a lot of things that will happen. There's a lot of experiences that need to happen. So in the next screen, and I'm just going to quickly describe it, and I'm going to go to details. There's a lot of things that happen when you're using a search. When you start clicking on it, you should see the visual keyword focus. And then maybe as you start typing, you now can delete the type or you can clear all the content. So now you have a new button that should be there. How can I reach that button with a mouse, with a keyword? How can I traverse, if I show a list of options, how can I traverse them? Do they have special links? Do they have images? Do they have special areas? So a simple search box becomes a really complex component with a lot of interaction. If they're not thought for or documented, they are not going to be developed. If the requirements are not clear, the issues will come. 100% sure, guaranteed. Right. So the more thorough that we are with the requirements, the experiences that we're looking for, the better and the safer it will be for the later implementation. Example 3 is a card, which I'm showing the focus order and the heading hierarchy. This I'm just concentrating on that example. It's basically on the screen. I have a card, Greece. It's showing a photo of a place in Greece called Santorini. And the card has a photo, then a subtitle Greece, Santorini, bigger font than Greece. And then it says Santorini is a stunning destination that boasts breathtaking views, and it should be on the bucket list of everyone traveler who loves nature. Learn more. That's the card. When I see this card, as me or as a developer, I should start asking, what is this card for? Where is it going to be clickable? Those headings that are they headings? Are they paragraph? Those things that are blue there, is that a link? Is that not a link? What is the interaction that I need here? So I next stage, I see that I maybe put on the requirements, Well, the image might be clickable, right? So you do a click on the card is a requirement. First requirement, click on the card is a link. Click on the country is a link, right? So you click in Greece, you wanted to go to a filter that shows all the areas in Greece. But you click and learn more, it will open a model to maybe shop or maybe learn more specific about Santorini. On the right hand side, I have a code that does this that was required, but it clearly has some accessibility issues. It's a link wrapping all of the elements, an image, a heading, another link inside a link, and then you have a button, right? So this is a developer trying to exactly do what was requested of them when this was sent to them. There are many errors in this code, and I'm going to highlight some of them. There's no alternate text on the image because it was never considered. It's not even qualified as a description, as a descriptive image. Heading is going from H3, which is a small heading, to an H2 because simply it just looks better, but you're skipping a level because maybe this component is not dropped where the area where it should be. So it's changing back and forwards between levels of the headings. And then there's a button inside a link, and there's a link inside a link, which are also errors because certain assistive technology cannot handle the bubbling of elements inside other elements. It just creates errors. All of that could have been avoided by having proper requirements of understanding how this component should behave. In many, many websites that we use, there's a lot of cards. Cards have multiple experiences. Cards are fun to have, display a lot of elements, but be clear on what the intent is, what you want to achieve with it, so that when the code gets developed, it gets better. And with that, I finish. Thank you very much for keeping me company today. I think we have time now for Q&A.
Sure. Thank you, Hector. That was good. I really enjoyed those examples as well. Those are things I run into quite often as well. I was just wondering if, like, your view on, do you think that if a developer was to have like a good knowledge of the HTML spec, that would be considered like one of the most useful things? And if so, how many developers would you say, like, let's say by percentage, you run into that have a really good fundamental understanding of the HTML?
Yeah, that's a great question. So HTML specs are huge. I don't remember the number of elements we have in HTML5, but it goes over hundreds of them. We might use, with all honesty, maybe like 10% of them. We tend to overuse and not use the proper ones. Back in the days of Dreamweaver, not to shame them, but they did great to try to do what they did. There was a lot of divs, which is not an element that has interaction. It's not an element that can be done a lot of things. So then you're adding code. For the team that I work with, we highly recommend learning HTML, simple HTML5, because there's a lot of elements that are already doing what you think should happen, or you're trying to develop something that the browser knows how to do. Some of them get introduced with the W3C standards, right? New components, and maybe they will be better and they will give you more accessibility compliance than us trying to develop the code, because then we now need to do CSS to make it observable. And now we need to do JavaScript to make a cube or operable, because we use a div instead of using a button. Right, so avoiding those issues by knowing the core language, which is HTML and CSS, highly recommended. How many people have a face in the world that do not know HTML properly? It's complicated to answer, but I think a lot. So we try to enhance it. Like we have code review processes where we ask the senior dev identify those people that need more help. Are like, hey, you can improve this way of writing this code. You can avoid these components or these elements. And don't get me started with attributes. Right? We have so many attributes that we should know in each element. It gets complex. As a recommendation, we always say keep at hand libraries that will have good documentation. Refer to design systems that have good documentation, what the components are, and refer to, I don't know, Mozilla Development Network, right? Like they have great documentation in HTML. Go to the best ones. Don't go to like the not so great documentation websites. But learning about um, HTML is critical for success. Yeah.
Cool. So, if there was a like a Hector action figure that had three buttons on the front, that when you pressed the button, it gave
Yeah.
a piece of accessibility advice, what would those three buttons? What would the advice that they give be?
Uh, be patient is the first one.
Yeah.
Is an uphill battle. Um, be be kind to yourself and to others. Not everyone knows. There might be a lot of people that is willing to know, but if we shut the door in their faces, they're not gonna learn, right?
Hmm.
So like be kind to yourself and to others, and continue learning. Like always learn. There's so many things that you learn daily. And I will say a fourth one, if there's a fourth button there, have a network that can
Okay.
help you um, understand certain situations where you might not know the solution, or maybe you have a wrong interpretation of how they should be done. Right. So talking to people with disabilities, their experiences, how they should be done, even talking to other SMEs, how will you solve this problem or situation is so helpful. It's greatly helpful. So join Slack channels where you have SMEs, join networks, go to meetups, go to groups to learn and always continue learning.
Awesome. Yeah. So, what is like one tool you advise? Because I think there's sometimes a reliance on tools.
Uh-huh.
Like, we'll be like, well, I run the test, the dev tools test, and it said 100. Like, what
Yeah.
is one tool that you would advise the a front end developer or someone reviewing front end development code used to get like good feedback?
Oh goodness. So and this is something that we discuss in the company a lot. The biggest one is keyword. Just use your keyword. You don't even have
Hmm.
to buy anything. Like just make sure that the website is navigable with the keyboard. If you can see it there moving and you have to see it all around, it's great. Like at least you know someone care for it. That's the first test we always do in a website. Like we go in a website and start tabbing on it, see where the keyword is going, kind of operate the entire website with oh, the page, let's say, website is a lot,
Yeah.
kind of operate it with the keyboard. Then, okay, these people care. And then you go to the next step, which is let's do a scan, which scanner is delicate because a web scanner is just going to look at the code at the state where that page is at. If the accordion is closed, it's going to look at the component when it's closed. When you
Hmm.
open it, you might have issue when it's open. So you have to be careful with the scanner. I recommend three always. Axe Dev Tool is great.
Hmm.
Microsoft Insights is really good. There's some people that like Wave.
Hmm.
I personally find it too busy for my brain. My mind cannot work with it. It's too busy for me. But all of them kind of like use the same core. I like to use Axe Core, which is standardized, is publicly available, free for you to use. If you want to do your own inspector element, just go and develop with that.
So if you could only be present for one part of the development cycle from discovery to design to development, what do you think is the most useful place for an accessibility SME to be involved?
We always recommend on the left, the lefter that you can go. Like if you can be there in the feature requirement, be
Hmm.
there, be there
Hmm.
before they start asking things that you know what, like this is going to be troublesome. Don't do it. So
Hmm.
you put the case stopper there. Um, yeah, we have a lot of influence in having this miss earlier because later there might be chance that you're working with great teams or you can train them,
Hmm.
have like some sessions, workshops, or open office hours where you can train them to do the proper development and the proper QA, the requirements, and stopping them from getting into the process is the best gate, the earlier
Yeah.
the possible. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Even I work in consulting business, right? So I work with corporations. So even at the contract, at the sales level, like we're shifting even left or outside of the software development lifecycle. When we go to sales and the scope of work, write it down. What do we need? What is the requirement that we want to accomplish? If we buy in a platform, what is that platform providing? Do we need to fix it? Is it going to be fixed or no? Like earlier the possible, the best, I'll say.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a good point. I think as well, like understanding who your like key audience is
Hmm.
can help you tailor what, where you want to look at being AAA, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, I got one more question and I'll stop grilling you. Um, so this is like I guess a more general philosophical question. Do you feel like the we are like bending towards the right direction in the accessibility world? Do you feel like more people are aware the the general attitude towards it is trying to do the right thing?
Uh, it depends. Like any answer in accessibility. Like,
Right.
is this an issue? Yeah, well, it depends. Um, we're just having right now the Paralympics,
Hmm.
and how much coverage is the Paralympics getting, right? So that
Hmm.
shows you from what spectrum of it, how much are we actually seeing the sport, how much are we seeing those athletes put the effort to get in there. Even like I grew up as an athlete, as a swimmer. I grew up I was trained in a pool that was used for a Pan American Games,
Hmm.
and the pool was made accessible for wheelchair users, for
Hmm.
wheelchair swimmers. I was there before that was done, so it was good for myself for learning when I was a kid, understanding the transformation of the physical space.
Hmm.
Oh, they're doing all of this because now we need to do this kind of stuff. It was awesome to see it as a kid, so it got embedded in me since a kid.
Hmm.
I do believe newer generations are more empathic.
Hmm.
The newer generation that is going into the development field, they're more willing to do things for others. Like, I'm 40 something years old, 48, 47,
Hmm.
can't remember. So I grew up in an era where we kind of have like a mandate to do things like do and don't ask. Like we were told what to do, do not ask, like
Right.
don't comprehend, don't create trouble. I think we have switched to like more of like I'm gonna do it because I think it's right.
Hmm.
I see it more. Does that translate to accessibility 100%? I don't think so. But I think there's an openness to accept that we need to make it for the right reason. So yeah, I think sometimes we're getting better. Sometimes I'm optimistic. Sometimes I'm like, this is not happening as fast as we wish it could happen.
Uh-huh.
Um, so I think today I'm gray in the middle.
Yeah, fair enough. A huge thanks to today's speaker and to everyone who shares their time and expertise and lived experience with our community. Your insights help us learn, grow, and build a more inclusive world, one conversation at a time. If you have questions for our speaker, here's how you ask. If you're watching the live premiere on YouTube, you can ask the questions live in the chat. If you're not watching live, you can leave a comment on YouTube video or continue the conversation on LinkedIn or other social media channels afterwards. Speaking of speakers, we're always looking for new voices, especially from marginalized groups in tech. Visit our speakers page to learn more, then reach out on LinkedIn or email us at team@a11yTalks.com to start the conversation. That's team at A11yTalks.com to start the conversation. Finally, let's keep this conversation going. Subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss a talk. Follow us on LinkedIn, Blue Sky, and Mastodon to stay in the loop. You can find all these links and more on our website. Thanks for joining us today. We appreciate you being here, and we'll see you all next time.